Hello, I'm Gareth.
And I'm Shane, and welcome to Building Business Resilience.
This is a podcast from Sanctuary Financial Planning, which helps growth business owners and social media influencers achieve financial independence.
We're two passionate financial planners on a mission to seek out new ideas, tips and tricks to help you take control of your finances and run better businesses.
We delve into the true goals and aspirations of our guests in order to provide you with some real value and positivity.
Nothing outrageous, clear, simple, solid financial solutions. We also have a YouTube series to accompany this, and details will be at the end of the show. So let's move on to our guest.
Welcome back to the Building Business Resilience Show. It's episode 23, and in today's show, we're going to be talking to Ruth Astle. Ruth is a triathlete and Ironman who's achieved some impressive accolades so far, namely overall age group winner, world champion, Ironman Hawaii 2019, overall age group Challenge Roth 2019, 24-29 age group world champion, Ironman Hawaii 2018, overall age group Ironman Nice 2018. All of this while still working a 70-hour week in corporate banking in London. But that's all about to change. She turns the tables and takes the focus to the sport she loves. So watch this space. 2020 has obviously been a different challenge for all of us, including Ruth. We chat all things Ironman, triathlon, training during lockdown and the future. So without much further ado, let's get started. Hi, Ruth. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. How's the lockdown been treating you?
Yeah, I've actually had a very good lockdown. I've been quite enjoying it. Just been training, working, and that's about it really. So it's not actually been that different other than not having any races to sort of train for.
So have you been able to kind of train, I guess, because you said where you are, you've got a pool there which you can use and stuff?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky in that I've been able to basically do fairly normal training the whole way through. With the main difference being obviously not training with groups, which would be something that I would do more, but I don't really mind it too much. I think when you're used to sort of training for Ironman, you're quite used to doing a lot by yourself anyway. So actually, yeah, I've not found it too bad at all. I think initially I actually quite enjoyed the fact that there was then no pressure and could kind of relax a little bit. And although at the time when we got locked down, I was kind of at peak fitness. I was like 2 weeks away from when I was meant to be doing Ironman South Africa. So I basically took 2 weeks of actually really doing nothing. Because my coach was like, you need to sort of lose fitness a bit and kind of go back into sort of winter training. So we don't know how long this is going to be for. And so that was kind of all right at that point. It's now getting to a point of it being a little bit more frustrating in that there are races that they say are going ahead and then they cancel them like 2 or 3 weeks before. So you kind of done quite a lot of training for it, kind of got yourself excited that there might be a race and then it goes. But yeah, generally speaking, I've quite enjoyed just training. I think as a sort of newbie pro, actually having a bit more time to train is quite good for me. It means that I get to try and improve on all the areas that I need to improve on so that by the time we get to racing, hopefully I've made like a few more improvements. So I've been trying to look at it from that kind of positive spin as opposed to, it's my first year as a pro and I've got no races.
What's the definition, Ruth, of winding it down for a few weeks? Everyone else are not exercising. Is it total, do absolutely nothing, stick Netflix on, go out and buy as many bars of large dairy milk chocolate, or it basically is don't train for 8 hours a day or just train for 4?
It's more like just do fun things. So rather than training, like actually just go for like a fun spin on your bike or, go for like a walk maybe rather than a run or like there's definitely more alcohol consumed in those first couple of weeks than would normally. But yeah, I think other than that, it was more like don't do structured training and just kind of do what you feel like. And yeah, I would go a bit mad if I tried to do nothing. That really wouldn't last very long. So I'd have to be getting out and doing something active. But yeah, just not like, go and do this interval set or something structured.
Isn't it amazing how so many people have got into the alcohol thing? We spoke to Neil Facky a couple of weeks ago, who's the Paralympian, and he said...
Like a wine taster now, isn't he?
Yeah, wine tasting massively. Buying all these different types of food so he can try different wines.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we basically did something similar, and we decided to try basically all of the English wines that we could find. So that was fun. That was good. But we've definitely established that English red wine is generally really terrible. And a lot of the white wine in the bubbles are actually quite nice. But yeah, if you like red wine, don't try English red wine.
No, I like red wine, but I've kind of either gone for kind of, I guess, the French or the Argentinian style, but not any English red wine. I don't think I've had any English red wine.
Yeah, don't bother.
No, I won't.
It's not worth it.
The only thing you need to do with wine is put red wine into beef. Other than that, just don't go near it.
Red wine. I used to like a Malbec, but I kind of like I haven't actually had a drink since, when was our Christmas party? 17th of December.
Yeah.
Oh.
It just kind of, it's just the way it kind of felt, because like we got a 9-month-old daughter, and I didn't want to kind of drink and then kind of have to try and get up with her, and it just, then we fell into lockdown, and I generally don't particularly drink much at home anyway, and it's just kind of how it's kind of panned out. I just literally haven't had a drink. I'm going to try and do the year if I can get away with it, but I don't think I will. That'll be the first time since I was probably 14 that I kind of haven't drunk for a year, but yeah, it's quite interesting. So tell us about your journey, your career so far.
Yes, I guess there's probably like a few different parts of it. So I joined Lloyd's on the grad scheme post uni. I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do. Was looking at all the general management ones. Lloyd's had a good one. I went and did the interview. I liked the other people that I met. So I was like, this seems like a good fit. So joined Lloyd's. At that point, I guess sporting wise, I played hockey all through school and uni. And I've always quite enjoyed sort of staying fit and active. My family's all quite fit and active, and also very competitive. So kind of quite liked having something competitive. But when I started work and then moved to London, hockey didn't really appeal to me. I'd kind of got to a point with uni where I'd kind of actually managed to play at quite a high level, I think higher than what my ability is. I just used to run around a lot and got quite lucky that the team needed someone to run around a lot. And a lot of the hockey clubs in London, you kind of had to travel quite far out. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. So I was then looking at, trying to do things like marathons and generally just do a bit of running. And it was at the point when I was training for Berlin Marathon in 2013, it must have been, and Lloyd's had a charity place at the London Triathlon, and I was working in a team at the time that were sending a few people to do it, and they're like, you're quite sporty, do you want to give it a go? So that ended up being my first triathlon, and yeah, just kind of really enjoyed it. It was something fun. I did reasonably well for my first one, so that kind of ignited that competitive streak again. And I then joined my local tri club, and it then became this huge social thing. I met loads of new people, made loads of really good friends, and it then just kind of all snowballed from there a little bit, really. Because then I started hearing about, you can go and represent Great Britain and go to these age group championships. And I was like, well, that sounds, who doesn't want to go and represent their country for sport? And then so I did that for a couple of years, and then started hearing more about some of the long distance stuff and this place called Kona that everyone kept talking about as if it's some magical place. So then that kind of came the aim of, I really want to get there. That sounds great, do an Ironman. And so I guess that's how it kind of escalated into going up to Ironman. And then that was all going reasonably well. So I kind of thought, what, maybe I should just give it a go being a professional triathlete. And again, just kind of see where it gets you. Because I thought I really don't want to look back in sort of 5-6 years and be like, I really missed an opportunity there to do something a bit different and just try it. And I think there's so many things about triathlon that I really love. It's you get to travel to all these amazing places, meet new people, see different cultures. You get the kind of, I guess, the other side of things, which is just sort of pushing yourself, seeing how far you can go, how much improvements you can make. And then I'm also quite lucky in that Lloyd's have been really supportive. So they've kind of supported me going down to 2 days a week. I managed to kind of create a whole new role for myself that, that I could do on 2 days a week. So I was like, I really don't want to get stuck into one of these things where it's a proper like full-time role and I'm trying to do it on compressed hours. So I think that's really hard. So I think with all these things, like with Lloyd's support, I was a bit like, well, actually, I might as well, I can give it a go because I've still got that sort of 2 days a week to keep my brain going and kind of keep me financially secure. And but it gives me that more time to sort of train and recover and kind of see where I can get to. Although clearly this year there's not really been any races to kind of give that a go. Yeah. But other than that, so yeah, I guess that's the kind of how I got here in a nutshell.
That's good. It's the likes. I guess you class as a multidiscipline. I guess triathlon. It just amazes me because people will train just to run or to cycle or to swim, but you've got to try and fit it all in, and be competitive at that, as well. For the listeners, what's a typical triathlon distances you'll do in actual competition?
So I'm, mainly doing Ironman distance, which is 3.8k swim, 180k on the bike, and then a marathon on the run.
See, and that's the Ironman genuinely blows my mind because I don't think I could do any of those, even if I trained.
Anyone could do one, 100%.
Yeah, I know.
It's almost like it's such a long way. Actually, I think a lot of it is mental and it's kind of keeping that focus on it and just keeping yourself going. Like, honestly, some of the people you see doing it, there's like this guy, I think he's the oldest guy at Kona last year. I think he's like, I want to say he's like 93. It's like ridiculous. And he gets around it in under 7 because they have a cutoff of 17 hours and he gets around it. And it's like, not only those distances, but like in those conditions where it's really hot, really humid, windy. So, if someone like that can do it, pretty much everyone else can definitely 100% do it.
Is it just the mental strength to do it of, you could, because I presume where you started out in 2013, you weren't able to do those distances, but it is a build up over time and you're tired or you're fatigued, but you just keep going on, and the pain doesn't get any worse at a certain level. It's just pain, and it's just push on through it and do better again the following week, and just continue to increase it over time, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think quite a big part of kind of Ironman training is actually you just get used to being tired. And I think, up to the point of when I turned pro at the end of last year, like I was kind of training. Like the job that I was doing before, I was basically the exec assistant for our chief information officer. So it was like a very full-on job. I was generally working sort of 60 to 70 hours a week and then trying to train sort of 15 to 20 hours a week on top of that. So you are basically just generally in a cycle of you're just knackered all the time. But there's points when you get to on the Ironman where it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm a bit tired. I'm hitting a bit of a mental point here that is a bit tough and I'm not sure about it. But actually, you just think back to like all those early mornings or all the times when you might have missed out on some social things. You're trying to do your training. And so I think like, the training gives you a lot of things to draw on when you're racing. But then like the other thing that I used to talk to my boss about quite a lot was actually I also think that kind of training also translates quite well into the workplace, but also like for me, it's like I work better if I've done some kind of training or some kind of exercise. Like if I like the times when I would race and I'd then have a couple of recovery weeks where I really wasn't doing very much, I felt so much worse sat at my desk trying to work. Like my concentration span would be off. I'd generally just feel a bit sluggish. So I think there's also something about just generally being a bit healthier and active and like keeping I think it's also like mentally stimulating to do that exercise as well. So like I think for me when I was working and everyone's like, how are you fitting all this in when you're working full time? And I was like, well, it's just actually I really don't function very well if I don't do it, both from like a sort of mental health perspective, but also just how good I am at my job. Like I genuinely think I'm better when I'm training like this. So I think there's part of it's getting into routine of it. But yeah, I think a lot of it is that mental. If you've got that drive to try and achieve something, you'll find ways of doing it.
Is it like the Steve Redgrave thing years ago? Do you remember he was saying he was always exhausted when he was going, was it the last Olympics, or did he just get diagnosed with diabetes? And they were doing sessions on the rower, and he'd have to just count, you know, if they had to do 10 minutes, he'd count 30 and just get those 30 seconds and go, well, that's one of them over. Is that almost sometimes the way you have to go of the strength inside you, that you might have 40, 50K to go on the bike, but you go, you know what, let's just get the next 2K over. Oh, that's done. Put it in the bank and then break it down that much that it doesn't become a massive challenge then.
Yeah, I definitely do that quite a lot, actually. And I think the other thing you've got with Ironman is you can also distract yourself a bit with your nutrition and having kind of various points at which you're like, right, this is the point when I should be drinking this bit more or having something to eat. But I do break it down into sort of 10K chunks when I get to that point. I've just been like, right, just got to get through 10K. It's going to be probably somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on how fast that bit of course is. And that then seems really manageable. And if you can break it all down like that, or I do the other thing that I also use sometimes during races is I just try and look at, I don't think it's going to work as well in pro races because there's not as many people, but when I was racing the age group, there's generally lots of people around you and generally quite a lot of men. And because of how they like set people from the swim. And so I would generally just be like, right, who's the next person in front of me? I've just got to try and catch them. And that would then be the focus point until I caught them. And then it'd be like, right, where's the next person? And just kind of try and pick people off one by one.
It's not. I was watching a YouTube video of you the other night and to see you started trying to do bread making or something like that, white sourdough or something like that. So is it a thing that you're there and your calves are in pain or something, but you're just thinking, block it all out and go, you're running away, you're on a bike and you're going, I wonder what'd be good now to put in the bread, just as a different, something different. Just totally zone yourself out and think of something totally different.
Yeah, well, I usually have some kind of really annoying song in my head, which then I basically spend the whole bike trying to get it out of my head because it tends to be something like really terrible that I don't even like, that I probably know about 3 or 4 words to. And if you have that going round and round your head for like 5 hours, but sometimes that's quite helpful. It's just something else to try and get out of your mind and something to think about for a bit.
What is the difference in age group and pro? Because you won your age group and you got to pro, but is everyone not in the one competition? No,
so there's, I guess, yeah, triathlon is a bit of a weird one. Generally speaking, to compete as a professional, you have to have confirmation from your national federation that you are good enough to compete as a pro. So for British Triathlon, they've got a whole set of criteria that you need to meet before they basically send you a letter that says, yeah, you're eligible to be a professional.
Yeah.
Other countries have different kind of qualifying criteria, but it is basically a different race. So all the big Ironman races, for example, the pros would start first, and then you basically get all the age groupers would come kind of after that. So you are theoretically doing the same race. It's just it is a bit different in terms of the pro men will go, then the pro women will go, and then thousands of age groupers will set off.
So you said something on one of the videos watching that you would potentially, if you were doing it for financial reasons, you would have made more money as a world-class age grouper rather than, I don't want to put the wrong words, as an average. Oh no, you'd want to be better than average pro person. So why step up?
Yeah. For me, it was about, I think it's just the sort of challenge of it. So I'd got to a point where I was basically winning all the age group stuff, and winning's nice, but it's kind of, I feel like I'd kind of done that. So it's well, actually now I just want to go and race against the best women in the world. So that's why the kind of step up to pro. And I think there's something about the kind of general lifestyle of it that appeals in terms of, the traveling and the training. And I was like, I'm in a position where I can afford to not be working full time for a little bit. It just seems like a good thing to do. But I think it mainly is from that kind of the challenge perspective and the sort of see how much I can improve. And I think I've got a better chance of pushing myself to improve more if I'm competing as a professional.
And that's the motivation itself of competing and pushing yourself against the best of the best on the planet.
Yeah.
Makes absolute sense. So, because you've gone up north since lockdown, how has everything, or the working and training pattern been adapted since all of lockdown? Because you said earlier you were only a couple of weeks away from peak fitness, and then crash, the world changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, actually my sort of working training pattern hasn't changed. So I've been doing these 2 days a week, which I generally split over 3 days. So I'll do kind of like Monday afternoon, Tuesday full day, Wednesday afternoon. So it's quite easy to fit all the training around that, to be honest. But I was kind of doing that before anyway. And because of how my team works and where we're based, I wasn't really going into the office very much either. So I guess from that perspective, it's not really changed at all. Like, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still training. I'm still working. I'm still not really in the office, and I don't really plan on going back to the office anytime soon. So, being up in Yorkshire and out in the country's just been a bit of a change, bit of somewhere different to train, and it's actually been quite nice.
Is a thing that changes as good as the rest, as they say, and different roads and different places to swim, ride and run is refreshing in a way.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think because one of the things about London in particular is the cycling. It's just, you have to cycle quite far to get out of London and to get onto quite quiet roads, and then you're generally probably in Surrey from where I am in London, and then you've got a lot of drivers that really don't like cyclists, so cycling was generally quite stressful in London, and I was doing pretty similar routes, and again I guess I've been doing those routes for the last like 4 to 5 years, so yeah, definitely a bit of a change is nice. And there's just so much, I guess there's like so much more variety up here, and it's generally like much tougher cycling. It's obviously very hilly. The roads tend to be, like proper English roads of lots of potholes and not the smoothest of surfaces. But I think that's quite good for training. So it just means the training's quite hard, which hopefully puts you in a better place when I come to race.
It's one of those things of, I would be under the impression that if you know the same route, you can push yourself to get better and better and better. Whereas if you go up north, I know you wouldn't because that's your job, but if somebody went up, you'd be looking around and taking things nice and easy and looking around at the new scenery and new surroundings because it's all new to you. Whereas if you're in the same bubble of going, this is the route I take, and normally that takes me 42 minutes and 15 seconds, but now I've done 42:10. There's a progression. So yeah,
I think you can still have that a little bit. I mean, I use Strava, so I often look at my Strava segments and see if I've gone better or worse on them.
Yeah, but up in Yorkshire, you have to keep your head down and make sure that you weave in and out of the potholes rather than nice roads down south.
No, the roads are really not much better around London. If anything, some of them are worse. But I think that's general English roads. They're generally not good.
Will London will you be returning to London then, as in, if you have everything on your doorstep now, is there the potential of, changing life in the future? Is that one of the questions you didn't ask yet?
I was going to say there's a potential, but that's more based on personal things than anything else. So, it depends if I get invited.
Wait and see.
Yeah.
It's what a lot of the things we chat about with the guys and ladies on here has always been mental strength and how to be able to, when you're having a shit day, being able to park it and show a happy face with everyone else. So when you're having a bad day or when things are not going right, how do you park that day and move on? So if you've had a bad race, you put it to the side. If you've had a bad training session, or if anything, if something in work has crept in that affects the training because you're thinking about it. How do you use that resilience or strength to park it and move on and get something else done?
So I think probably one of the benefits about triathlon is that it's 3 different sports. So generally, if you've had one not very good training session, you might have had another one that's a bit better. But I think I'm generally quite good at just being like, well, it's just a training session. Like, you're not meant to be being a hero in your training session. If it's just a steady run and you felt a bit of shit and your legs weren't really moving, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it was time on your feet, that's fine. And I think it's also recognizing that, like, we are all only human. You're going to have days where you really don't feel good. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to go and do that training. But actually, some of those days are the days where I've had some of the best training sessions, because you just sort of surprise yourself, because I think you don't have any expectations. But I also think it's kind of, it's being able to be sort of reasonable about it and be like, well, it's one bad training session. So what? I've done like 50 other really good ones. It's trying to put it in perspective. I think particularly when you're training for, well, I guess when you're consistently training most of the time, it's like, obviously you're going to get some bad days. No one's going to have a completely smooth run of stuff. But just know it's kind of part of it. Like, you need to have some of the bad times to make you appreciate a bit more when you have a really good training session, because there's nothing like that buzz of, I find it, for me, it's if there's been a session that I've looked at that I'm a bit like, I don't know if I can do that, you know, like if it's on the bike and I'm looking at the power that my coach has given me and I'm a bit like, not sure I can do that, and then you go and do it, like, that's one of the best feelings ever. So I think it's again, it's trying to think back to, you know, I've definitely got runs where I know that I just need to get my trainers on, get myself out the door and kind of get going, and then it'll be all right. But even then, there's some runs it's kind of every kilometre is a real struggle and I really don't want to be doing it. But I just try and think about, right, well, when you get to that race and everything starts to hurt, like, you don't want to look back and be like, oh, well, I kind of slacked that run off and I didn't really want to do it. It's almost that, you know, in your mental bank, you've made yourself go and train when you don't really want to. So you know that actually when things get tough, you can kind of keep going. And also, you know that you've sort of done everything to put yourself in the best shape to be there, which I think that's quite important when you're on the start line, to kind of be like, yeah, I know that I've done everything I can to get myself in the best shape. I've not taken any shortcuts. I've not made any excuses. And, you know, therefore, as long as I can try and execute the race quite well, it theoretically should go well. Obviously, there's lots of things that can go wrong, but it kind of gives you that slight confidence on the start line.
Yeah. Does it help? Because it didn't make sense to me, but I kind of get it now, that you're, and please don't take offense this way, that you're not full-time pro, that because you still have a put in the existing job, that you can take yourself out of the world of triathlon and you can kind of go, do you know what, I have another thing to focus on at certain stages. Where is it a thing that if somebody was doing that full time, it becomes all encompassing and it can devour you, whereas you can actually step out into a different world and, in a nice way, try and forget about it for 2 days per week?
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the reasons why I kept working, because I'd kind of spoken to quite a few people who'd come from a kind of similar corporate background and then gone into triathlon professionally. And a lot of them kind of said, actually, you'll probably want something to keep they were like more to keep your brain going. And as you said, have something else to focus on. And I think particularly during this year, if I hadn't, you know, if I'd gone properly full time, I would have been going out of my mind by this point, because it would have just been kind of really intense. You can't really escape it. I think it's a bit different probably when you've got to a point of, you know, say you've like established yourself as a triathlete and then actually there's other stuff you can do off the back of it. But I think most people I know are kind of doing a couple of other things on the side that is like probably a little bit different and kind of is sort of mentally stimulating. Because I think, yeah, otherwise I think it just gets a bit much. It kind of everything being in that world, and then it's probably much harder to just, yeah, like brush off some of the hard sessions or try and keep perspective. So I found that really helpful, and that's quite, yeah, I have no plans on not doing that.
Okay.
I think, I'm always going to want to be having something that's a bit different to kind of focus on and have on the side.
It's like escapism, isn't it? Kind of like some people use sport as an escapism, but you're using work to kind of escape from kind of the tough rigors of training for Ironman.
Yeah.
A horrible sport to try and train for on a regular basis. I can't get it. I can't get it in my head. No, it's no.
Because what's general training day look like?
So I guess it depends a bit on the day, but a typical day would be swim in the morning, and I guess most of my swims are probably between like 4 and 4.5K of swimming. Then probably, so again, depends a bit on the day. We'd probably like do about an hour of running, and then maybe like 2 to 3 hours of cycling ish. Like, again, depends on the day. Sometimes it'll be shorter because I'll be doing intervals, and that's not every day. Like I'll have at least one day where I'm not running every week, and at least one day where I'm not cycling every week. And I don't really swim at the weekends. But yeah, like most days are kind of a bit of everything and just sort of mix up.
Do you throw strength training into it as well?
Oh yeah, I'm useless at trying to make myself go to the gym and do strength stuff. I'm trying to be better. That's been like one of my big things of actually going part-time. I should be better at that. It's definitely a thing that when I was working full-time, I always binned off. Like pretty much every week I'd be like, oh, can't quite fit that in. Don't really want to fit it in. But I think it is important. I should be doing more of it. But that's definitely the part I enjoy the least.
It was nice listening to you the other day. Was saying you've like everyone else, you have found it really, really hard trying to do any gym stuff at home, like everyone else. Somebody that has to do it almost for a living is kind of going, I really hate doing all of this sort of stuff. The motivation is very, very difficult to try and do stuff in your own home.
It is. There's so many distractions, and it's just much easier to sit on the sofa than go and try and do some kind of like cool or anything like that. Yeah, I'm not good at it at all.
The days that you don't do a run, does that mean that the time lost on that is then means an increased bike ride and vice versa? Is that the way it kind of works? Still train the same amount?
Not necessarily. Quite often, so I'd say like probably a Monday and a Friday, probably a bit less because they'll be a bit easier days. So like Monday generally, because I would have done quite a big weekend and done like longer bikes and longer runs, and then Friday again similar. It's kind of like a slightly easier day before a kind of big weekend. So no, often it will just be it's just a lesser day of training. Yeah.
How do you balance it all? The working life and both working lives then between Lloyd's and all the exercising?
Well, it now seems very easy because I've got like 14 hours of work and about 20 to 25 hours of training, which is not really very much compared to what I used to be doing. So yeah, it's not, like from a training perspective, I've got a coach, so he just sets me the week every week, and I just have to do it. And from a work perspective, it's kind of actually it's like reasonably easy. Like I've got my rough days of the sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but if things change around a bit, or if there's a call that I need to do on Thursday, I just switch things around a bit. But yeah, I have to say that I found it quite easy balancing it all, to be honest, because it feels like I have a lot of time, which is quite nice.
Can you change that when you're saying about doing something on a working Wednesday afternoon rather than Thursday afternoon? Can you do that now because it's lockdown and there isn't a specific time and goal to aim for, where if in the future you have a specific date, do you have to be that rigid, or is there still the flexibility in all of that?
Can definitely still be quite flexible. But yeah, I think again, generally there's ways of making things work. So like if there was a really key session that my coach said, actually you should be doing it on that day, like, I'm sure I could work stuff around, but generally speaking, it's probably there's one of the sessions that day that's kind of more key that should be done on that day, if that makes sense. So I guess, again, like with that kind of time you've got, it's quite easy to get at least one key session done and move other stuff around. Yeah, I think, again, with a lot of the sort of training, it's kind of, a lot of it's more of a kind of broad shape, as opposed to you'd have to do this on Monday, this on Tuesday, and if you deviate from that, that's going to ruin everything. I think actually one of the things that some of my injuries and stuff has taught me is it really doesn't matter that much if you have to deviate from the plan a bit, and actually often doing a bit less is a bit better, which I think is quite hard sometimes to try and sort of get into your head. But yeah, so I think it's a bit dangerous to try and get too rigid as well, because then again you kind of get into that mentality of, oh my god, I can't do this, and then that's going to ruin everything. Whereas actually I think one of the really important things with Ironman is being able to be flexible, because it's a really long day. There's lots of things that probably won't quite go to plan, or that might not go how you thought they would. So you sort of need to be able to adapt and sort of mix things up while you're racing. So I think it's quite important to be able to have some of that flexibility as well.
That's a mental training exercise in still maintaining the 2 days of work, knowing that for the whole year something will happen in work that will mean having to change and having to be able to adapt, so that your brain is able to adapt to things immediately, so you can bring that into the competition environment.
Yeah, definitely helps. I think, and again, it kind of goes both ways as well. You know, I think in some ways I'm probably better at being resilient and adapting to stuff at work, because I have to do it so often in sort of training and triathlon. So I think it definitely comes back the other way as well. So it's helpful for both work and for triathlon.
Like everyone else, is it easier to get out on a bike or out for a run on a nice sunny afternoon compared to the middle of November when it's absolutely pouring down, it's 1 degree and it's nearly dark? You know, is there still the horrible times then where you go, I don't want to be doing this?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think everyone's had those days where it's a bit miserable. But I think, again, you just kind of, that's where I think it's good to have like a good training group, because then it's always going to be slightly fun, even if it's really miserable, because you get to catch up with some of your friends, you get to have a bit of a chat. But yeah, I mean, I've had many training days where it's like, I really don't want to go out the door. Like, it really looks horrible out there. And no matter how much chocolate and wine I promise myself, it's still not that appealing.
But the miles and the hours and the minutes still get done, because they're in the bank then. And that's when you can bring it to the forefront of your mind when you're having a bad couple of minutes in the competition, I suppose. Yeah,
definitely.
What have been the big highs and the big lows so far in the career?
Probably like the big high. Well, I guess from a triathlon career, I don't really feel like I've had one yet. Seems I've done one pro race and that did not go very well. So that was definitely a bit of a low. So yeah, I guess hard to tell really. Have to wait and see. And hopefully there'll be some more highs after the relative low of my first race, where I just had a few sort of equipment errors and then had a couple of punches on the bike and a bit of a knee issue on the run. It was one of those races where it's kind of like pretty much everything sort of went a bit wrong. So that definitely wasn't great, and that was a bit of a mental struggle to get to the end. But I didn't want to not finish my first pro race, and I kind of thought, if I can get through this, then any other race I do is probably going to be better. So hopefully going to be better anyway.
Is that in the bank now, that nothing else can go as bad as that? So going forward, there'll always be you can always...
Hopefully. I mean, there's always a chance that there could be a worse race, because again, there's so many different things that could go wrong, but hopefully that's about as bad as it's going to get.
What is a punch like when you mid competition? Do you just change a wheel, or is it? more to it than that?
You have to change your tyre because there's no support with the spare wheels. So you have to carry your kit with you to change it.
So you're carrying your own gas? Your own
Yeah.
gas? Yeah. So how do you account for that? Because the more you carry, the heavier you're going to be, but the less you carry, the less tools you'll have for something that may happen. So is there a set amount of things that everyone takes, or does everyone take different things?
I think most people take enough for one.
Okay.
If you get two, you're a bit unlucky. So when I got my second one, I didn't have anything to change it with, so I just had to roll in the last 15k on a flat tyre, which I wouldn't recommend. But
on a flat tyre?
15k as well. We're not talking like a few hundred yards, are we?
No, that was not fun.
Never mind how much damage it did to the wheel.
Yeah, don't think about that.
A nice 450 pounds wheel gone, if not more. And how in terms of speed, how does that decrease from what to what with a small tire?
I mean, definitely a big impact, and unfortunately, it was on like the fastest bit of the course. So, yeah, I would have lost a lot on that bit. And there was a few. That was the bit when we're heading back into town as well. So there were a few like little roundabouts, corners, and again, I don't know if you've ever tried cornering on a flat tire, but it's quite difficult, and you basically have to not really be moving, otherwise you're going to fall off. So, yeah, it was not fun.
I thought this. You mentioned earlier about how everyone was friendly and stuff like that, but when it comes to competition, nobody's going to throw you anything. They're not going to stop and help you. It's everyone for themselves in the competition.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we ask then? Funny moments, be it competition, training. Put
me on the spot with that. I don't know, really. I've not got any that spring to mind. I mean, there must have been some, but yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that. That now makes it sound really boring, doesn't it?
Oh, that's all right. I'd be the same. We do throw this one in. I'd be the same if I put on the spot. So what's next for you now?
Well, I actually had the possibility of a couple of English races, which is exciting. So I'm meant to be doing one called Helvellyn Triathlon, which is in the Lake District, in sort of 2.5 weeks. And then there's potentially one in Nottinghamshire at the end of September. So I guess they're not really pro races. It's just local English races, but it's a race, so that's exciting. But yeah, basically just waiting for some of the bigger sort of Ironman and challenge races to start happening. So I guess they're the ones that sort of qualify you for world championships or actually give you a bit of a paycheck. But they're also the ones that you also need thousands of age groupers to be doing it to make it financially viable for them. So can't really see any of them happening anytime soon. So wait and see. Just keep training.
Will they not start sooner rather than later? Because everything is outdoors. So potentially the social distancing is there because pools are opened now. And realistically, there isn't going to be a huge group of people, is there, on a run or a bike, as in, because they'll all be spread out over a period of distance.
Well, I think unfortunately most Ironmans people are quite close, but it's more the issue that you've got thousands of people all coming to a town, and I can't see any local towns really wanting that risk at the moment. No, it makes sense. That way. No, it's been superb.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
That has been really, really enjoyable. Best of luck when it all does start to kick off again. Ruth, thanks for chatting to us. We'd better let you get back on the bike, or is it into the pool, or get your trainers on for a run. Wow, that is a lady who is certainly going places and fast. Head over to our website, www.sanfp.co.uk, to learn more about us and our journey. That's it for this episode. Next, we're talking all things food with the Hangfire ladies, Sam and Shauna. You can hear that wherever you get our podcasts. Plus, don't forget to click subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they arrive. Don't forget to listen to our new Chats the Bar series every Tuesday for a short insight into business, money, finance, aspirations, dreams, and planning. Also, if you're enjoying the series, please do leave us some feedback with a quick review, as this helps us to grow and ensure that we're giving our audience the best experience. Until next time, thanks for listening.